Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me once again on this very short broadcast. And today we're going to be looking at transformational leadership. For many of us, when we think of transformational leadership, we think of people like Winston Churchill, for example. Winston Churchill, for those of you who don't know, and I don't think anyone doesn't know who Winston Churchill is, was a well-respected and victorious wartime leader in the Second World War. He's well known for how he defended liberal democracy against the spread of fascism. He didn't do it on his own. He did it by working with allies and collaborators. But he was an influential figure in terms of preventing the spread of fascism and standing up for liberal democracy. Why was he transformational? He was transformational because his ability to motivate people, to touch their hearts and minds, and to move them into action through his motivational speeches, motivating them to fight for what was right, for what was morally correct, was his transformational legacy on the world. And then we have people who were leaders in their own rights. They weren't political, but they were civil rights leaders. Emmeline Pankhurst of the United Kingdom, Rosa Parks of the United States. By virtue of being women, especially at that time, they can widely or largely be considered to have been completely powerless. They had no rights, they had no power. And yet from that position of inferiority, they managed to shake up the world. They disrupted the status quo, and they influenced and initiated the rise in thinking in terms of equality for women, women's rights, winning them the right to vote, a really basic right in most places. But women didn't even have that. And today, we have women that are in leadership positions. We have had women prime ministers and presidents. And it all started from their transformational work in transforming the hearts and minds of people, in transforming people's beliefs from a state of victimhood to a state of, yes, we can. Then we have people like Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela came out of prison after being imprisoned for 27 years, imprisoned for believing and fighting for equality between all races. His belief was that no one, no race, no denomination is superior over another. And the apartheid government in South Africa had other ideas. So they locked him up in 1964. And 27 years later, he was released. That's another story which we'll go into at another time. But when he was released, and he became president, most of the populace in South Africa were in a vengeful mood. They wanted revenge, they wanted payback, and their mind was set on that. When Mandela came out of prison, he transformed that thinking from a spirit of vengefulness and hatred and separatism and apartheid and discrimination into a mindset of reconciliation, healing, accountability, acceptance, and unity. And he didn't do this by mechanical means. He didn't do it by putting in a set of processes and a set of rules and regulations and then just hoping that that works. He did it by appealing to, once again, the hearts and minds of people, because that is where the magic lies in terms of transformational leadership. And then we have Barack Obama, the most unlikely person to ever become a president in the United States. And yet he did. His speeches, especially the Yes We Can speech, inspired American people into believing that things could be better. Believing that nothing had to remain the same. Believing that they had the power to make a difference. believing that the American dream was still alive and available to all. And how did he do that? His oratory abilities, his speeches were all able to touch the hearts and minds of the people he was speaking to turn them around from one direction into another. Now, those are all the good things about transformational leadership. As with anything, there's one side of the coin and then there's another. There are people whose names I will not mention in public ever again because of the atrocities and unthinkable crimes against humanity that they have inspired, the stains on the history of mankind that they have left, the legacy of suffering, separation, victimization, and persecution that they have inspired. They were able to transform ordinary people going about their day-to-day business into people that supported and committed atrocities against others by manipulating their fears and by encouraging hatred, an air of superiority, and vengeance in some cases, instead of inspiring unity and togetherness. So when we talk about transformational leadership, we must remember there's two things to it. The first thing is that there are two sides to that coin. There are those leaders who will transform and change the world into something better. And there are those leaders that will transform and change the world into something regressive, backward. The second thing to remember about transformational leadership is that while on an organizational level, for example, let's say it's a change in organizational strategy and vision. In situations like that, the most popular thing that happens is transformation takes place by a restructure of the organization, which generally means the moving out of certain managers and leaders and their replacement with people who have a certain kind of mindset. Now, that's just the way things are. It's not necessarily bad. Sometimes the old leadership and the old management simply don't fit into the new vision and strategy. And trying to get them to change may be too difficult and too time-consuming to meet the demands of the new strategy. That's more of a mechanical process. It's nothing to do with hearts and minds. It's just to do with manipulating the system, the structure, and the processes to bring about a certain result. So that may be the case at certain levels in an organization. However, we cannot get away from the fact that once the leadership or the management have changed, they will need to work with people who are in their charge. And those people are not robots, and they're not mechanical objects. They have hearts and minds. And so after they come in, after a transformation, they will still need to be able to touch and motivate the hearts and minds of the people they lead, because that is where the magic lies. I promised to keep it short, and I did. Well, I think I did. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you again in the next online meetup. Thank you.